full 4 damage overwhelm and the ability to wipe out that Valkyrie, Bike Spokes gets
You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back, everybody, to the ETS Season 1, Week 8. I am Gabe, also known as Calendar, and here in the booth with me to break down Round 4 is LocoPojo.
Hey guys, we got a great round for you today. We're seeing a Xenon mid-range deck, although it's a little tempo-oriented, actually. It only caps out at 4 with Sandstorm Titan and Xenon Obelisk. And beyond that, it's rolling tons of 3-drops, tons of 2-drops, and kind of like a little bit more aggressive than your standard mid-range. This is being run by SecondBlue. We also have Feln Control with the standard Black Sky Harbinger Witch combo, Azindil's Gift, the Champion of Cunning, and Rindra Duskblade, as well as, of course, 4 Ind Cold Bloods and 1 Death Strike. And that's being run by BassoonBuffoon, who I'm told is close friends with Rubber Baby Bucky Bumpers and Loose Lips, the sinker of ships.
Oh, man. Yeah, so the Feln Control list is kind of standard to what we've been seeing so far this weekend. Obviously, a lot of variance in the list. Just because of new cards, people, not sure if they should be playing Daraka, how many copies of Hailstorm, how many copies of Lightning Storm, if any at all, things like that. But we're still featuring, 4 Rindra, 4 Champion of Cunning, 4 Harbinger, some Channel of Tempest, things like that, and the typical removal spells you expect to see. The Xenon Interrogator list, though, very interesting. A couple interesting things going on here, namely Lunar Magus and Devour. And Devour is really strange to me. It might even be mostly there to sort of counter removal, just as card drop, because this deck kind of looks like it wants to position itself on the board and then hold the board as like a true mid-range deck would. Sort of go from aggro, like play a more controlling game against aggressive decks and play a more aggressive game against controlling decks.
Yeah, I think that there's a definite strength to Devour against any sort of removal setup if you're really trying to make sure that you can get stuff going. It's a good thing to eat your Temple Scribes with and just get a little bit of extra draw. There's not a better Shadow way of drawing cards that early, and SecondBlue is looking for a very, very efficient draw core. I think that's a pretty strong choice, actually.
Yeah, he has 4 Xenon Initiation and 4 Obelisk to pair with this Auric Interrogator. So very likely Auric Interrogators are going to be drawing him cards. Blister Sting Wasp also as a 4 with the Dark Returns. So I'm a big fan of 4 Dark Return, 4 Auric Interrogator decks. I think that there's actually a lot of strength in those sort of mid-range style decks, and you get to play like, minimum base 25 power, very minimal fixing, and still be able to play your game plan very effectively.
Yeah.
So I think it's a cool style, especially when you have hand disruption to back it up in cards like Vera's Choice.
Yeah, I really like SecondBlue's choices here. I think that he's set up basically for a really sort of reliable type of deck where he is really, really likely to get the things that he most wants out of it. So yeah, I think that's fairly cool stuff, and it's a good design for a tournament deck. So we'll see how well it goes.
Yeah, as SecondBlue has Temple Scribe on the board, only time influence so far. Gonna get this Lunar Magus down, which is gonna be able to potentially find him a Shadow Source, since he'll have 2 draws next turn. But
yeah,
BassoonBuffoon just doing everything he wants to be doing.
Yeah, the lack of Shadow influence may really come back to bite him soon, but for the moment, he's good setting up Obelisks and setting up a couple of other options. He'll eventually be able to Vara's Choice some Black Sky Harbingers out of the hand or some Champion of Cunnings. There's some pretty good options available as long as he actually draws into his power, and the Nightfall is going to help him do that. Now, the other thing about this deck is that it is a Nightfall deck, or at least it has some amount of Nightfall. And traditionally with those Nightfall decks, like they can be a drawback if you're playing sort of mid-range soup, unless you are playing really, really cheap stuff. Because if you are able to play out all of the cards with Nightfall before your opponent can play their cards, then you can really get like an aggressive start on them and sort of take advantage of that deck. So I think that's a good inclusion and a good reason to down the curve a little bit.
Yeah, I personally don't love Nightfall in this deck because I think Devour and Temple Scribe are not really the cards you want with that. But he does have a lot of insurance towards that, with Obelisk just being really good if he ends up drawing too much power, and just having a lot of cheap spells to play, like you said.
Yeah, Obelisk and Nightfall go together super well just because of the ability to play down any amount of small units and have them be very, very good because you're drawing your power and you're drawing your threats. All of your cards matter, and like if you can make all of your cards matter more than your opponent's cards do, that's pretty solid stuff.
I think he only has the Lunar Magus for Nightfall, though. He doesn't have any of the Amethyst Waystones or anything like that. I think it's just the Lunar Magus.
Not going too crazy with it. So we see the Black Sky Harbinger is almost available. SecondBlue has the Vara's Favor here, and he can certainly hit the face, but he's not looking for anything too crazy right now.
SecondBlue is in a pretty good spot for being stuck on Shadow Influence for so long. He's going to be able to just hold up playing Interrogator with a Xena Initiation whenever he wants, once BassoonBuffoon gets down his first threat.
Yeah.
BassoonBuffoon doesn't have a great sweeper available to him. If he plays Witch now, it's going to miss the Interrogator.
Yep. The Cold Blood kills the 4/5, and that means that there's not going to be a Devour for SecondBlue on that one because he's 1 power short, but he's pretty okay with that. He can play the Seed of Mystery here, and Auric Interrogator will come down. It'll be a 5/4. He can Xena Initiation it if he wants, or he can just use it to Devour later for more cards. And we see 4 damage in, 1 damage from the Interrogator. Now, BassoonBuffoon has the ability to kill maybe 2 of these units. He can't get all of them. But with Withering Witch plus Hailstorm, he'll be able to get them all next turn, assuming that he can do something crazy.
He'll be alive, barely.
There may be ways for SecondBlue to get lethal here, and he's certainly going to look for them. Temple Scribe helps.
Lunar Magus does it.
Yeah.
And he has it with Dark Return. I don't know if he'll see it, but
if he Dark Returns Lunar Magus, that is lethal. And it looks like that's the play he's going for. So we see... Nope.
Oh, nope.
He missed it.
All right. Well, it's a pretty hard one to see because it's...
Yeah, it's a tricky one. You got to pay attention to your void here. So Hailstorm or Black Sky Harbinger will stabilize Bassoon a little bit, but he's still probably dead on board. He kills 2 Temple Scribes. He gains 5 life. SecondBlue has a Devour here to draw a couple of cards, so he doesn't lose too much out of this.
Yeah, also denies BassoonBuffoon a life, but BassoonBuffoon now has a path back into the game when he could have just lost.
Yep. Yeah, the Reinarch here is going to be fairly bad. And no attack, actually. I'm a little surprised by that one.
That in Cold Blood is huge because that Reinarch was probably just going to end the game before BassoonBuffoon could really get any value out of Champion of Cunning or anything.
Yeah.
In Cold Blood helps a lot.
Yeah, BassoonBuffoon would really like to be attacking with his Black Sky Harbinger, but he just doesn't have the ability to do it here. He can Hailstorm and kill the 2/2. Another Devour happens, so SecondBlue is still just up on cards, doing really well with those Devours. They've been super helpful for him here. And there's another Lunar Magus.
SecondBlue is very far ahead in this game. I mean, BassoonBuffoon has passed to get back in, but it's a long road.
Yep, he's actually going for like the exchange here, attacking in for damage, forcing a 5-4 trade, putting him on like a 9-turn Glock, and then just trying to get Champion of Cunning out for the maximum value. But Xena Initiation on the Dawnwalker means that he's down yet more material. Champion of Cunning doesn't really want to trade with Auric Interrogator. It's kind of his last hope. Rindra is very solid here, but looks like he's going to hold off on that and try to use it to win a little bit later on.
I think BassoonBuffoon might be hoping to draw Shadow Source and then gain 7 life off of this Rindra. I'm not sure.
Yeah, SecondBlue has the Vara's choice and not a lot of reason not to use it. I guess he decides to hold it for Devour. There's the Rindra. So we have a lifesteal Overwhelm and a 5/5 that doesn't gain any life. Vara's choice here silences the Rindra and puts it back, and that's going to be lethal.
Yep. Just way too much card advantage from that Auric Interrogator for a control deck to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, SecondBlue had card advantage from all sorts of places. He got basically 3-for-1s off of the Devours several times. He was looking pretty good with the Nightfall triggers just because all of his stuff was cheaper and Bassoon couldn't play his threats out fast. Like, basically everything just kind of steamrolled, and that's what the deck's intended to do. So he got a good execution on his plan.
Yeah, very good against a controlling meta.
Yeah, I like this version of Xenon a lot. I'm not sure if I'd style it as mid-range, just because, like, I'm not sure if you qualify 3 drops as mid-range, but it's up there.
I consider it mid range. I think in Eternal, mid range is can get very big,
Yeah,
but I still
yeah. I
consider it
often
mid range.
like to call the sort of space between aggro and mid-range tempo, but it's sort of really just a way to categorize things. I think it's fine to call it mid-range either way.
Yeah, but ultimately it's a very value oriented deck rather than being straight aggro.
Yeah, I'd accept that. I think there's a reasonable amount of aggression here, but it is mostly about like just getting more big units than your opponent.
Yeah, and each of those a lot of those units either gain value by staying on the board or um, gain value when your opponent tries to remove them just by things like that, or just when you play them. So
All right, getting into it. Okay, so each player is looking at their sideboards. There's extracts, in cold bloods, predatory carnosaurs, banishes, and annihilates in second blue's hand. So he might consider some like banishes or maybe some in cold bloods to kill certain things. I don't think there's anything crazy that he wants to go for. His deck's pretty well positioned against Feln already. BassoonBuffoon, on the other hand, is looking at setbacks, dark returns, lightning strikes, steward, witch, hailstorm, and annihilate. And I think those annihilates in particular are going to come in.
I might have to restart my Eternal because I cannot spectate BassoonBuffoon.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll give that a shot. I don't currently have them up yet. Oh, yep, there we go. So, we'll update you on what's going on as you reset your client. BassoonBuffoon's currently sitting on a Sabotage and a Seek power, along with a Vara's Favor. So he's got a technically 3-power hand that is actually a 1-power hand. He might keep this, and if so, he's going to be pretty okay with it. Yeah, and he does actually keep that hand. So it's Primal into Seek. Oh, no, never mind. There it goes. Spectator view. Feln Banner, Seed of Cunning, and Cobalt Waystone get him 4 power, so he's looking much better at building out his threats. And he's got Death Strike and In Cold Blood. He's mostly got to worry about second blue building out too much.
Yeah, so like you said, sideboard makes removal just a bit more efficient for both players, and BassoonBuffoon has a ton of it this hand.
Yeah, there's 2 obelisks in second blue's hand, which are really solid cards if he finds more threats to play. The Dawnwalkers are amazing here. Just there's very little that BassoonBuffoon can do to void bind them and get them out of the way. He can't silence them. In Cold Blood does not void bind unless it's a Justice, so that's really not looking so good. Yeah, and it's going to be pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, I think this hand is actually very, very good against not only BassoonBuffoon's whole deck, but lines up very well against BassoonBuffoon's hand, except for that Steward. That Steward is going to prove to be a huge issue.
Yeah, that Steward is the right choice. I'm glad that people are still running the Stewards. They're still very powerful cards, especially against this Dawnwalker strategy. So Bassoon will be able to shut down probably one of the Dawnwalkers. The main issue here is that he had to use the Annihilate too soon, and he didn't draw the Influence to play the Steward of the Past this turn. So if second blue plays down a unit that can actually get the Dawnwalker back, which is the other Dawnwalker, then it's going to be pretty hard to kill both of them.
Yeah, killing both in the same turn is going to be difficult without the use of a Hailstorm. And then all it takes is one other unit to come down on second blue side to just bring them right back out. And Steward won't do anything.
Well, that obelisk there instead of the Dawnwalker means that the Steward actually does get the opportunity to play out. So I think second blue was correct in playing the obelisk first, but he couldn't have really predicted the Steward of the Past would come down and actually knock the Dawnwalker out of the way. So now that Steward's down, that's one Dawnwalker out of second blue's deck and out of BassoonBuffoon's hair. BassoonBuffoon is now looking at, again, that classic Feln influence 5 primal foreshadow. I see so many players at 5 primal foreshadow just wanting their champion of cunning to be the game taking over ridiculousness, and it's just not quite there.
Hey, I prefer 5 primal foreshadow over 4 primal 5 shadow.
Yeah, it's true. I think most people do, and that's why the decks are generally weighted towards the primal, which is So you see this particular version of the influence a lot, and it's pretty interesting. So now we have Hailstorm here, which can kill something. We have Deadly. We have In Cold Blood, which can knock out the Auric Interrogator. BassoonBuffoon can deal with any single target, but the Obelisks plus the Dawnwalker are as much of a problem as you'd expect, and 6 damage across every turn is still really devastating. Dawnwalker's nerf hasn't really affected its viability at all.
I'm not a big fan of these banishes staying in post board, but I mean, it does kill Rindra, and Rindra is a big deal. But it does kill Stewart as well. All right, fair enough. But second blue, the value train is rolling.
Yeah, we see the Death Strike there on Auric Interrogator. BassoonBuffoon now has to decide if he's going to throw an in cold blooded at Dawnwalker, which has to feel bad. He can't Wisdom the Elders here, so he can't get his 6th power for Black Sky Harbinger. And even if he could, Black Sky Harbinger is not doing the same job as the Dawnwalkers were previously. All right, we see Sabos and Strategizes here. He's got some actual like setup to make. He can get himself into a position where Champion can start actually gaining him life, but he's really got to get those Black Skies down too.
So as I talked about value, second blue's 2 value threats were actually finally dealt with, and BassoonBuffoon finally starting to act like a control player, draw some cards, remove threats. But here comes the Carnosaur, comes back, Dawnwalker comes back from the void, and I think it's just a little too much for BassoonBuffoon to deal with here.
Yeah, he can Black Sky, and then he's not dead, but he's pretty dead.
Yeah, Obelisk has just made every threat so much damage this game.
Yeah, there's a 9/9 on board. The 7/4 is attacking in for 7. A second Carnosaur just totally wrecks the Harbinger, and that'll be it for BassoonBuffoon. Second Blue takes both games with his really solid Xenon sort of tempo. Good stuff.
Yeah. So 2-0 there. Quick matchup. I think we're taking a look for backups for you right now. I quite like honestly both those decks. I think that the Interrogator deck, I'm not sure how well it would do on ladder. I do like it does have Ion and Lunar Magus for aggressive matchups, so it definitely has a lot of game versus aggro. I think that could definitely fall prey to drawing the wrong half of your deck though against a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a pretty tricky situation, but just a really reliable curve and a really reliable amount of just good threats. I think that's an interesting take on the setup, and certainly is a cool thing to be doing.
Yeah, definitely. And Vera's Choice is really good right now. We didn't really get to see it that much in either of those matches, but Vera's Choice, especially when people, if people start playing Ikaria again. I know people want to play with all the new cards right now, but people will be back on Ikaria decks, and Vera's Choice is very, very good against Ikaria.
Yep. Okay, we're looking at a potential game of Kamado versus Tony, but Tony G just I believe killed a Okay, we're gonna be jumping to Mouche versus someone else. But yeah, I just watched Tony G take out a large tap rod with an in cold blood, which had to have been satisfying. So we'll be seeing a little bit more of that certainly in the future. Argenport midrange is a really solid deck, and in cold blood is a fairly solid counter. We'll see how well that ends up working out. In the meantime, let's see if we can get ourselves into Mouche's game and see who he's playing up against.
Yeah, he's against Serb, who we've seen previously. So Serb is on that sweet Elysian Horn deck, and Mouche is on another Huru deck. So we've seen this matchup before, but Mouche's deck is a little different.
Yeah, we actually have like a pile of self Aegises with Mistveil Drakes. I have to assume he's playing that 2-cost Unseen that likes face Aegises so much. Yeah. And he's also got some islands choices, sort of the Sky Kings, the Huru Flyer, Shelterwing Rider. A lot of good things here, a lot of Aegis units, a lot of ways to sort of stifle interaction while he sets up a very, very late game control deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm loading up Mouche's deck here, and I have Winter main board. Whoa, that's interesting.
Yeah, I like those Aya Winters. They're a really solid card. They save you a lot of card advantage, and you end up with a lot of cards in hand. I think I want to do a version of this deck sometime soon with the Urska delightful.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah. Well, this deck has 4 Harsh Rule, 4 Channel the Tempest, 2 Staff of Stories. So this is a very, very controlling Huru list, which I think is pretty cool. Not actually playing Ward Wielders.
Yeah, Serb playing down his Doraka. That 7/7 is super valuable here. And today it pops an Aegis on the Sheltering Rider. That means that it's no longer like that Aegis pop is like really important here because it means that the 7/7 doesn't really have any issues if it dies. It still gets the value that it wanted. So
Yeah, so
good
this
stuff
is
there.
like as traditional, as true to the control archetype as possible from Mouche's side. The Mistveiled Drakes are in the sideboard, are coming out of the sideboard. So I think they're mostly just for control mirrors to have a difficult to deal with finisher. Um, so interesting to see them come in here.
Yeah, Serb's got to be feeling a little sad about his current situation. He just permafrosted a non-Aegis 0/5, which I think is a pretty good play if you want to make sure that it doesn't get protected.
Yeah.
He knows that he can kill the other Sheltering Rider with his World Bearer Behemoth if he can get the time influence. But at the moment, that triple time is actually kind of hurting him, and that's causing some major issues.
Actually, I believe Serb permafrosted that Sheltering Rider just so he could get in damage because I don't see a way in Mouche's 90 to give any of his units Aegis.
Yeah, pushing damage is certainly quite relevant here, seeing as it is a control deck, and it's also a control deck in green and blue. And one of green and blue's really big weaknesses is that it is not very capable of gaining life. Your best life gain card is essentially Throne Warden, and that's sort of a way to get yourself a little bit more stable, but a lot of that armor goes away pretty fast. So
Yeah.
from here, we're seeing Mouche just trying to slowly hold down the fort. He's still deciding if he wants to attack with his 5/5s. And Serb is not worried about his life total. Every time he plays an Overwhelm unit, he's going to gain that 3, and he's going to be in much better shape in the race. So Mouche has to stay back and defend.
I really, I'm really favoring Mouche here, not just because he's ahead, but just because I think that uh, the way his control deck is tuned lines up pretty well with Serb's overall game plan. Definitely though, Elysian Midrange is one of those decks that can just beat control decks, no matter
Yeah,
what.
Mouche is in a lot of trouble here. It's really good that he's found power 7, but it's not undepleted, so he's
Yeah,
still got issues. He can Island's Choice and Answer. He can hit another one with an Eye of Winter, but then he still takes 4 from the Dawnwalkers. Like, he's just in a position where if he can get stable, he's fine. But
yeah.
in order to do that, he needs to keep playing power and keep setting up, and it's getting a little bit tougher now.
Too many too expensive cards here. So he just needs to get into a position where he's able to leverage his advantage and actually play 2 cards per turn. But that's not what's happening, and the card advantage isn't really amounting to much real actual board advantage because he can only play 1 card per turn, and his cards are less valuable.
Yeah, he's dead here. 6 and 4 coming in with an unseal to block Island's Choice.
Yep.
Serb is definitely going to pick up this round, and I don't think there's anything that Mouche can do about it here.
Nope. Not a chance. Needed some other interaction that could get around unseal, but he doesn't know that, so he's going to try and go for this Island's Choice, and this counter will end the game.
Yep. Yeah, if there had been, I think if he'd had a little bit more power a little bit earlier, he'd been okay. Certainly the Mistveiled Drakes stand up very well against units. So do the Throne Wardens. He can gain a little bit of life, stop the 4/1s for a while, and Serb's still stuck on influence, would have had some issues there. But yeah, just not enough stuff going on. And without the ability to kill the 6/7, he just gets Islands choiced out.
So we're going to see Serb continue through the tournament with a pretty impressive streak there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to see them win before, and we see them win again. So maybe we'll see them win even more in top 8. But I think that is round 4 for us. Let's take a second and talk about Counter Bob and Rekenner's ETS recap show, which they do on, I believe, Tuesdays. Whoops. I believe it's Wednesday. It doesn't actually say in the little thing there.
It's
that
moving
I
around
have.
on the schedule. I think it might be Wednesday now.
Yeah. So Best of 3 is the name of the show. It is Counter Bob, aReNGee, and Rekenner, and they do a recap show of the ETS. So if you miss ETS or you just haven't had enough content about it and you want to talk about all the cool decks that showed up and things like that, come hang out in the chat. It's during the week. Come hang out in the chat. Come listen to what they have to say about it, talk about the meta and things like that, go over some stats that you don't normally get to see otherwise, how many decks show up and win percentage, things like that. Really cool stuff if you're into stuff like that, which I know I am. And frequently they interview a recent tournament winner, so that's some cool stuff. So yeah, come on by on weekday to get to know some of the aReNGee crew, get to know some of the tournament stats, and get to know some of the players.
Yeah, be a good time.
And with that is going to conclude our coverage of round 4. So we will catch all of you guys later in round 5.